in the sun, in the wind, with some blankets if you feel good. I want to introduce the second block of the day, which will focus on art and design with Japanese Knotweed. And our first speaker, we've already met him this morning, is Raphael. So give him a warm applause and enjoy the music.
Thank you very much. First, I want to thank for the invitation of delegating to be a part of this. And the second one, I want to thank about Knotweed himself because it's a connection planning. And I want to start with a few. This was the first flute I got to play the speech. Now I want to say something about myself. I'm Raphael, I'm 24 years old and I live in Munich. And my main job, I'm working as a kindergarten teacher in a children's home. And I don't have a background as instrument worker or something like this. I'm a hobby flute maker since about 6 years now, and I took myself shorter and longer breaks because I'm a self-taught flute maker. That means that there isn't so much information in the form of books or something like this. I want to read this. I taught it by myself, do it by falls and winning situations, and yeah, it took a while, but I think it's the best way to learn something. I use mostly Japanese Knotweed. I make also flutes out of other materials. I talk about it later. Yeah. Maybe the first questions you can give me in the most of talks is how do you come to the hobby flute maker? Because flute maker isn't so common, and it's a funny story because in my kindergarten education I must do a work in a wooden school. I can choose it. I choose it one, but I must do this. And there I choose working in a wilderness school in Austria. In this work, I have found the flute the first time. It was in a little box, and in the box there was many of nature connection stuff, like books, like tools, or something like this, and my first flute. And the first flute, it was creepy, it was dusty and so on, but I went into this topic. I want to play this, and I have this around the whole 2 weekends, 2 weeks, the whole day in my head. And my mentor at this time looking at me and saying, wow, okay, cool. It's so cool to see a young guy which is playing the flute all the time, and he getting me a flute making kit. In this picture you can see my first flute out of wood, it's a flute out of two pieces which are glued together, and I only have an English instruction. And I think my English isn't so well, because it's, if you want to make flutes, it's a little bit vocabulary, you don't use it in the common speech. And then it's a little bit later, the guy come to me and show me the first time Knotweed. I don't have a clue about Knotweed since this point anywhere, but it's the first time, and I'm a lazy guy, and I think it's the best material for me. Yeah. Now I want to show you a double flute, which is made of two flutes, but you can play it single time or double time. The difficult part, I think, it's to getting the exact tone of it, of the same flutes. There are two Knotweeds, and Knotweed has always different wall thickness, and it's a little bit difficult to create the exact tone of the bass. Yeah. I want to, I think it's, flute making isn't a very difficult thing. Maybe you may say, now I'm imagine people or something like this, but the basics aren't so difficult. There's one big flute maker in America. He says flute making isn't a rocket science, and I agree with this totally. But if you want to have a perfect one, yeah, that's totally right. But the basics aren't so difficult. Also, the playing isn't so difficult because the flutes are tuned in a special tune. That means it's pentatonic, which is meaning that every tone is harmonic with the other tone. That's why I can play everything and it sounds good. And the second reason is that the flutes are tuned in your heart frequency. It means that normally orchestra instruments, for example, are tuned in 450 frequency, and the flutes I made are tuned in 432 frequency. And if you sing, you always have this same frequency. It's a reason why flutes are so have this calming down effect. Yeah, and I want to spread out this amazing hand skill from Native American people, because the first flute you can find is like the 16th century old, and my motto is the same way to get a tone like this one. And yeah, why do you use Knotweed? It's fun. It's a funny thing to get in touch with people only to use a flute. If I go to the river, go to the forest or something, I took up a flute with me, and sometimes I play, and the people came to me and asked me, hey, what is it? Is this bamboo, is this cane, is this wood? No, it's not. It's not. And then most people ask me in Germany, like, Knotweed, what the fuck is Knotweed? I didn't hear about it. I don't know where it's growing and something like this. And sometimes you can say that then look beside you. It's always there. It's harvest. It's growing always. And that's the result is some funny chats with the people in my past. And yeah, it's a icebreaker. You can talk about the flutes. You can talk about this plant as well. And yeah, it's a positive side of it. It's not a negative one, like it's a relative plant, it's a new free plant. But they can talk about much deeper about Knotweed with this kind of icebreaker. And also can put in the negative ones. And yeah, I think it's good that way. If you find Knotweed, you find mostly big amount of Knotweed. That's my opinion, the biggest reason for me to use it, because if I have in my history, I built lots of flutes, and most of the flutes aren't going so well like this one on the table, and I don't care about it, because if the flute isn't so good, I take another Knotweed stand and make it repeat, and so I can't have the end of the material. Second one is that is very easy to work with. You don't need to have power tools. You don't need to have much power in your hand. I built Knotweed flutes with kindergarten teacher in the age of 16 years old and so on. But I hate them very much. But the power is enough. And yeah, the last and for me one of the important reasons is that Knotweed is teaching you a regardfulness. That means that the Knotweed isn't so stable like wood, like bamboo and so on. And if you lie down the flute on the ground and go with your foot on it, it's void. And the whole work, maybe 10 years, 10 hours or something, it's gone. And if you work with little child or people which make the first flute, they lay down maybe on the ground, then someone destroy it, and then you have an awareness about this. You thought, oh shit, this was my flute. And I think it's a good way to learn for yourself the awareness and for the instruments as well. Yeah. This one I always play for you. In this picture you can see the basic. This is the left picture and the finished flute. But the basic one on the left side also plays so well like the right one. You don't need the mouthpiece, you don't need the cordage, you don't need the stone or something. You only need the left one, but it's much, it looks much better. with the flute you can play also more songs if it is known as usually in physical symbolism. In my opinion, it's the Knotweed isn't the Knotweed. If I see Knotweed, I am very I am very difficult to sort out. I have different sorts. The green one, I can't use it. I can't use the green one. Maybe if I try it at home or something like this, but it doesn't go so well. And yeah, I use mostly the white one. But on the white side, you can see 3 different knotweeds. And the best knotweed for beer in flutes, in my opinion, is the white one because it's the freshest one. If you harvest it in the early autumn, it's looking like the white side or the middle side. And if you go now outside and looking for knotweed for making flutes, it's mostly looked like the left one, but the left one isn't so stable. And I use mostly my 2 fingers, and if I can break it with my only 2 fingers, it's not good for me. And I throw it away and I switch and for another one. The basic construction of this flute is 2 chamber flutes. That means you have always 2 chambers in the flute, and the first one is the air chamber, then the sound chamber, and the connections about these 2 chambers are the totem. It's this thing with a stone on it. In history, there was sometimes like animals or something like this, carved one. If you have a soul animal as native. I took mostly stones on it, sometimes not. It's not so a big thing. Yeah, and you have the air hole and the sound hole. That's the basics. And this basics to understand isn't so difficult. And the difficult part is to create a clear sound, and to create a nice clear sound. And if you want to make a flute, you don't need very much tools. You need little files. In Germany, translated it's key files. Then you need a little bit of sandpaper in different sizes, the cordage, Knotweed as well, and the sandpaper tool made myself. It's a wooden board with sandpaper on it. And then you go and make a flat area, only with using this one. And then you can go with the key files, make the first hole. And then you go to this building the whale, like this one. I don't know if you can see it. And now I need a little piece of what Knotweed to make the connections between these 2 parts. And that's it, mostly. And then you can put your holes in it, and then you have a flute which makes sounds. And mostly the biggest magic in flute making, I think, is to create the first sound. And then it's a game. You get the sound the first time. And for me, I using only in the first year I made flutes. I used only this little pocket. You can see here. I forgot to set it in my room, and it's like in the size of my phone, and I don't need more. Then I want to go a little bit deeper in the primitives primitive skills, and then I only use stone tools. Stone tools out of, I don't have the name in English now, but they are only stones in different sizes and different forms. A little branch and cordage out of branch or something like this, and it's enough. You can use only a Swiss knife, and my exercise now is to reduce the tools more and more. Yeah, and I don't know if it's possible to reduce it more than stone tools. On this project, I have a YouTube video where you can see me, how I build the flutes out of this with the stone tools only. Yeah, as I mentioned already, I mostly use knotweed for my flutes, but I also made some flutes out of bamboo. In the middle you can see a walking stick flute. It's like so high, and you can use it as the name says as a walking stick, but you can also play the flute. And it's always the same principle. The flute around my neck, it's also work, but it's a little bit tiny. And the right side, you can see a flute where I'm using only nature material. The cordage is out of metal, and yeah, there we go. I experimented a little bit about making instruments out of knotweed beside the flute. With kids, especially with the smaller kids of kindergarten age, you can easily make a rainmaker. You only need a bit of this one. What is textile? So, I think in this one I use leather, and yeah, and you need only use leather or something like this, nails, cordage, and I take resin, and it's enough. And under this rainmaker, it is a little rattle without nails, and it's relatively simple to build them. Sometimes I want to have a little challenge for myself, and I build flutes beside the knotweed out of other material. You can use also cane, also wheat. This is this one. Thistles. This is the middle one, and sunflowers, and also milk. Because you only need a plant which have these two chambers, and you knot between this, and then you go. And I'm a lazy guy, like searching for plants which I already hasn't the inside of the branch. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Raphael. Are there questions from the audience?
So, the miracle for me is how does the air get from the first chamber into the second one?
Yeah, I don't know if you can see it. You have a little tunnel between this tunnel and the piston. And the challenge is to size. If you make it too deep, it sounds like airy. If you make it too thin, it's don't sound. You need it to make it in the right size.
So the sound exists, or it exists because of kind of a fan flute system, very straight air over it.
I think it's the easiest way to explain. It's if you take a bottle and you blow the air on it, then you can make a sound. If you make something, you only need to have a little side where you can blow the air. And also you can use snails for great sounds. Empty snails. I hope that they say. I hope the
Snail houses.
Yeah, snail houses.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can create a sound.
I have another question. Or two actually. One is very simple technical one. Your drawing is closed at the end, and a normal recorder has an open end typically.
I can show
Are
one
your models
flute
closed or
around.
open?
Yeah, it's open.
Oh,
It's
that's just a drawing.
it's a mistake in
No problem.
picture.
Then my real question.
It's open. Yeah.
You're a kindergarten teacher.
Yeah.
So you have tried to do this together with the children. And from what age on can you make a flute?
I think the youngest one was 6 years.
Ah, okay.
But
That's an advanced kid.
yeah, and you
Average kids?
you need to make an room where you can teach it solo. In the kindergarten, you haven't mostly the time to have one kid to teach it, and but I think when the kids are nearly 10 years old or something like this, you can teach it on your own.
Yeah, so elementary school level.
Yeah, exactly, and but I don't recommend the biggest size of classes or something because you must present to be present, and I don't like it that you it's not so easy to create a room for all the kids. Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you.
Thanks again, and the flutes will still be on the table for a little while if people want to check it out later. Our next speaker is Marit from Wine Design. Give her a big applause. Wine Design makes very beautiful biomaterial out of knotweed. And I'm really curious what types of things we can make from this material. So, have fun and enjoy the presentation.
Thank you very much. Yes, so my name is Marit. I'm one of the founders of Why Not? And in this presentation I'm going to tell you what we're doing with Knotweed and what we're doing as Why Not. And I think it's quite funny because we started like a bit over a year ago, and I find it quite unique to be in a room full of people who actually like the knotweed, or at least try to find its potential, which is really funny because we started a lot with municipalities, water authorities, and other companies, and I've noticed that there are a lot of mixed feelings about this plant, and usually a bit more negative. Yes. I made a little bit of a mood board of the reactions we get when we're saying that we're working with knotweed. So of course everyone knows of its immense growing strength, but also its ability to spread rapidly. And we noticed that a lot of people get really scared when they hear about it or just see the knotweed. And so also these people in the municipalities. And of course, like if it's growing on a place where you don't want it, it can be quite scared, even if you can get rid of it easily. But yeah, we noticed that people really want to fight that way because they're so afraid that they really want to use every measurement needed to get rid of it. And it often results in like using poisons. And everyone who's been here yesterday also heard like all the details about how people want to get rid of it. So poisons are mainly used, but also freezing the plant, electrocuting it, or even boiling it by digging all the soil out with all the roots and boiling in hot water and put it back. But you can imagine using all this way, you will also kill all the microorganisms and all the other plants who grow nearby, which is quite bad for the environment, of course. So in this time that we're still kind of searching for the right solution that is also eco-friendly, we still want to get rid of the knotweed if it's growing somewhere where we don't want it anymore. So what we're doing now, or we agree with in general what's happening in the Netherlands, that it will be cut. And that happens quite a lot. Maybe you also have to do it sometimes, maybe it was in your garden. I don't hope that it was in your garden. But then you know that you have to separate it and do it correct, separate it from your other green waste. And it will be also done on a bigger scale. But do we know what happens when we separate it and then it will be picked up? It will be incinerated. And as you can imagine, if you have so much of this knotweed in the Netherlands, at the moment we estimate that we have around 42,000 square kilometers of knotweed in the Netherlands. And every year it will be more and more. And if we incinerate all of this, and also notice that it will be cut 2 or 3 times every year, that leads to a lot of CO2 release, of course. And they don't officially track this, but we made a bit of an estimation how much that would be. And it is around 1.7 million kilograms of CO2 that is released every year just because of the knotweed, which is an insane amount. And we also have climate goals, of course, which kind of have a mismatch with this. For example, also the goal to be completely circular in 2050, and this process isn't there yet, as we harvest it and incinerate it. So this really needs to be changed, how we treat the knotweed at the moment. And that is also where we as Why Not really like to step in. So our goal, Why Not, is to turn this hated plant into a loved product. And we're doing it by creating a new sustainable biomaterial. You can see here up close, I also have some samples. You can maybe take a look later and also feel or smell the materials. And when we create this material, we really look at the properties of the plant and trying to translate it into this new material. So it's, for example, very strong, not light. But another thing that is, you probably immediately see that it's very different, all the types of knotweed, or how we handle it. So, for example, if you harvest it in winter periods instead of like summer, or even each month in summer, it gives you a completely different effect, which is really nice that you can also see it, which tells a lot of like a story about the knotweed, which you really love. Yeah, as I said, we're working on it for like a bit more than a year now, and we're also experimenting and developing the material, because we don't just want to make just another very nice biomaterial. We really want to use it in the future. And yeah, we have an idea of using it. This is a little scale model we made earlier, because we really want to use the knotweed for indoor design. You can see a few examples, so you can make chairs or bookshelves or even wall panels that are acoustic. And we really want to use it for this because Aside from the knotweed, the Netherlands have other problems, of course, but one of them we found in the interior design. Maybe you're familiar with it, but if you, for example, buy a closet in IKEA, there's a very big chance that they have quite harmful additives, like formaldehyde, which is quite harmful for human health, but also just for the environment. And we can make this material without any harmful additives. It's 100% bio-based, and that's why replacing these old materials, it will be better for our health, but we also like to connect to nature a bit more this way. Yeah. And by making this, we have a few, two kind of main points we really want to imply in our design. And one thing that we find very important is that it's part of the biophilic design. And for everyone who's not aware of it yet, it's a way of connecting human and nature through design. And it can be done in different ways. So you can literally use an element from nature and put it in a room, but you can also make something that's inspired, it's very organic or just looks like a plant, but also in ways of smell, for example, what we've seen yesterday. And this way, we really want to tell the story of the knotweed, so we're not gonna put like a plastic layer over it so you don't recognize it anymore. We really want it to make it visible. And also, for example, if you have in your company, you want 10 depths of knotweed, everyone will be just a little different, and that way it also becomes a personal object. So you can request, I want one made in the winter periods or in the summer periods. And because it's growing everywhere, it would be also great if you're like if you're from Amsterdam and you like the city, that you think like, oh, it's growing there in the street, which I really love. I want that knotweed to have a paper for example. So to also change how we look at products at the moment and make it very personal. Another element we find very important. We already heard a bit more about circular economy this morning. But yeah, as you can see, we now have a quite a linear system. It's very simplified, of course. That then you have your raw material, you make products, you use it, and then you dump it. And usually it will be incinerated. And we really want to go to a circular economy. And you are kind of trying to knot those ends together. So when you use your product, you want to reuse the material for kind of a new circle, for new use. And this way you never have a lack of new raw materials, and you also never have waste, which we find very important. But how are we going to apply this? Then we need to look at the life cycle. So we have the knotweed, we shred it into smaller parts, make our material, and then make product. But if the product is fully used, or maybe damaged, if something falls or breaks, we can re-shred it and use it again in the process. So this way we don't have any waste anymore. But it's still natural material. And of course you can stop biodegradation process with putting lots of chemical binders in your material, but we really don't want to do it. So we really want to keep it as natural as possible. So after a few loops, it will start to biodegrade, and we can put it in the soil to enrich the soil. It's actually quite good for it. And then new plants can grow on it. And it's very important to mention that other plants can grow on it, not the knotweed. We're not trying to spread it. And also within this whole life cycle, there's absolutely no risk that the knotweed will be spread anywhere, which you find very important, of course. So we've seen our goals, what we're trying to do at Why Not, and I would really like to introduce our team, who is actually going to do this. So we have Casper, who joined 2-3 months ago. He's sitting there. So if you later have questions, you know how we do that. He's responsible for the business development, and also is very interested in the interaction between human and nature, and also restoring that bond. And as I said, my name is Niek Kristof. I'm one of the founders, and I'm responsible for the product design. I have a background in product design, and I'm doing the material development, which has been a lot of fun lately. But we have quite big plans, as you can see, and a rather small team. And we also noticed this, that if you really want to make impact, we have to work together. So we started quite some collaborations. So after like 1 month of starting working with Knotweed, we made a chain project to completely fellerize the Knotweed. And for example, we're working with a Varta lab, and they are responsible for looking into the Knotweed more in chemical ways. So it has a resveratrol, and they're trying to extract it to make use of it, but also paper innovating, looking at lignin and making coatings from it. So we can fully use the Knotweed to its full potential. But another very important one for us is the GKB group. They are groenafnemers, or they cut the Knotweed in South Holland. And maybe if you've worked with Knotweed before, you know you can cut it, but if you want to make it bigger or more commercial, it's going to be quite a problem to get your Knotweed, as it is actually quite illegal just to use it. So that's why we work with them, because they have the license to actually cut Knotweed and transport it, which is very important if we want to scale. Another one is that we work with water authorities, and it's quite funny that in the beginning we talked to water authorities. They were really scared of the idea that we want to work with Knotweed. So most of us immediately told us like, no, we don't want to work together, we don't even want to hear the ideas. But after a while they actually came back to us. So now we have contacts with quite a lot of water authorities who start to be more and more interested in it, which you see as a very good sign. And another one is Blue City. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's this big swimming pool in Rotterdam, the Tropicana, which is now emptied, and there are laboratories in it. There are about 60 entrepreneurs who are all trying to make this process from linear to a circular economy possible. That's also where we're working, as we all have the same dreams of the circular economy. So we're working there, and this is a little image of the laboratory where I'm working. It's a bit messy, but really like making this material and trying to make it better, and also use everyone's knowledge to experiment with new items. Also nice to say how we started with the Knotweed, because it's maybe not the first things that come to mind when making a biomaterial. But we joined the Circular Challenge, also hosted by Blue City, that's held once a year. And to be honest, I didn't do any research. I had no idea what Knotweed was. So I just came there, and they put you in a group, and then a big water authority came, and they told us, we have a problem with Knotweed, we need a solution. You have 6 weeks to turn this into a circular product or a business model. So we were like, that is quite a big challenge in 6 weeks. But from the first week, we actually fell in love with the plant, because it's so many nice qualities. And we actually also won the circular challenge, and it really started our experimentation with this plant with our dreams with Knotweed. Now I actually want to highlight 2 little projects we've done this year. One of them is the House of the Future. Maybe you've been to Fujisawa or the Dutch Design Week, and it is a big, huge house, all biomaterials. Next week we have like a miniature version, and that's where we are. Hopefully one day we'll also get some materials in a big house. And they organize it to really show the materials of the future. And we want to show people that Knotweed is not just an art project. We're not going to quit in a few years because then we find something else. We really want to show that it is possible for invasive species to be used in interior design or as a building material. So first it was very important to join this exposition, and now this is also touring in Europe, which is really nice. And another project I actually wanted to highlight because the person we collaborated with is also part of this festival. So maybe you've seen in your little like program books the energy, Japanese Knotweed energy drink from Yoshinari. So a few weeks ago, months ago, we just walked into a new city with, I'm working with Knotweed, I have this cool drink, I want to talk about Knotweed. So, of course, we were very happy and we started brainstorming together. And we made this little beer crate made from 100% Knotweed. Also to showcase his drinks a little better. And it's also a lot of fun because we didn't use any connection material, so no nails, no glue, just 100% Knotweed. It also results in that if you all have the drink, then you can take it apart and kind of stack all the pieces up so it's easier to transport. It's for a designer. Yes, we're near the end. And I actually just wanted to talk a bit more about our vision of the future of Knotweed, but also other invasive species. Because I think being on this festival, we have a plan for Knotweed, but we all have this plan for Knotweed. So I'm personally very positive that we can really make use of it, and this future of Knotweed will be very positive. And I think also if you don't have this new amazing idea what to do with this, just if you're being open to using this kind of species that's not as normally accepted as other materials to find from IKEA, it's a already big step to make this acceptation. But of course, Knotweed is not the only material in that, or not the only invasive species. As mentioned before, we have sampled the giant colibris, the great pennybird, or American crayfish, and they're also seen as threats, just as the Knotweed. And we really want to show by using the Knotweed as something very positive, to show that it's also possible with all the other invasive species. And so if new species come in, also with climate change, they probably will come in, that we make the step to first look at the potential of all the plants before trying to get rid of it. And also that way trying to connect humans, especially maybe in the city, with our local nature again. And that is presentation. That's how we're going to turn this hated plant into a loved product. Thank you very much. Questions? You actually use linseed oil for the finishing touch. That's more like a coating to make it a bit more waterproof, although it's not completely yet. So for binding, I'm going to be very honest, I cannot tell everything because we're also working with partners who are very private with their ideas of what they're making. But we've discovered that in the Knotweed itself you have quite a lot of natural binders. So in the summer variation, we have a lot of sugar, which also helps. But in the winter variation, we have a lot of lignin, which you can also, if processed right, use as a natural binder. So that's our starting point when making our materials. And then try to use a minimum of bio-based binder, but we cannot really tell what's in the recipe, maybe in the future. And that's also one reason why we can keep reusing it, because we don't add that much weird stuff. Any other questions?
Thank you so much. It looks really beautiful. Maybe you can put it on the table so people can take a look at it later. Thank you so much. So the next part of this day will be an introduction of what's happening in the later stages of this festival. So what's coming up next is an introduction of festival participants that are doing a workshop or an experience maybe on a later stage. we have Lucie, Pauline, and Takako, and they will all shortly introduce what they are working on. Uno and Takako are a bit late, so maybe Lucie can start. Sorry to surprise you. So Lucie is doing workshops with dyeing with different parts of the plant. And I'm very curious to hear your story and learn more about your connection with Japanese knotweed.
Thank you. Okay, it's really the first time I do this. I do make a lot of slides too much. I will probably talk too much. I'm Lucie Havel. I'm a visual artist. I work since 5 years with Japanese knotweed. Yes, this is my picture. Since a few years I work without any glue or silicone, whatever. I gather my materials, and a few years ago now I found Japanese knotweed in my garden. I wanted to start a project with it. So I wanted to do that because I don't know if you already tried to cook Japanese knotweed in a basic environment, and you get this very beautiful red color. I was so surprised about it that I wanted to start a project and to see everything which I could do with Japanese knotweed. In fact, what I wanted to do is to see if I could adapt myself to my environment, adapting my environment myself. So in place of putting new plants in my garden and see what I could do with it, try to use what already was there. And I also wanted to see if I can use a plant and not exploiting it. What is the difference in there? Well, to achieve that, I really need to have knowledge to get to know the plant better, but also to have techniques to use it. So I went to see a few people who did help me. I don't know if you know this man. He's really a very good chemicus. He's a specialist of natural dyes, Michel Garcia. And he introduced me, the first step, the chemistry of the plant, the methodology which I could use, and I did learn me to dye also only with vegetables. I say that because in fact 2 years later I did discover that I did never use alum, for example, which was really risky. Now this is a little picture of what I did before in Michel and what I did during this workshop, for example. So you see that a little bit of knowledge can change something. However, I did also go to France to weave. We have a school, we give diplomas for that, so I did some weave there, and I did make paper with Marika. We will do a workshop tomorrow, paper making with Japanese knotweed. Now, this is a few examples of what I do with Japanese knotweed. I use everything. I use the roots, I use the leaves, I use the stems, I make paper, I make dyes, I make inks, I make whatever. I go from one experiment to another. I make an experiment, I observe, I always find something interesting in there, and I say, oh yeah, but I need to try this, and I need to try that, and I go on and on and on. So, now after 1.5 years, I did double everything in a small book, which I show here. There you can see a little bit what I did. So a lot of dyes, inks, pigments, and of course using the fibers. I want to tell you something also is that what I do also I'm working very low tech and very low cost. So there is not very much adjuvants, there is as much possible energy in the project. There will be very much slow dye, for example, of this kind of stuff. And everything which I use, for example, if I work on the fiber and I have some butter with extraction left, then I will make colors on it. So it's going on and on and on in my studio, and I don't have wet forest because I use everything of the Japanese knotweed. There's also, I say, laziness and silliness. It's because I try to go really, I try to don't like too much. And I don't buy very much as well. I use what I have in my studio. So for example, if I want to have, to see what's the shrinkage of the material, I will use Japanese knotweed to make small molds. This is another example. For example, if I'm cleaning roots and have this contaminated ground, no, I will use it for my embryonics. I didn't use them, but I have them. I don't know. In other project, for example, I wanted to have molds now, no problem. I have Japanese knotweed, so I will make a substrate. Plants is really used for everything in my studio. It's really my companion now. I'm really working with the plants. It's really it's my partner. Now, and of course, when I'm on holiday, what I do, I find Japanese knotweed. My family is also involved, and because I have nothing and I don't have a studio, so I dye the hair of my little niece. It's a very, very, very good team. Now, Japanese knotweed is everywhere in my practice. In small acts, for example, here it was for other projects, but I did use Japanese knotweed here with the sheep. The sheep did well at school, did also eat the Japanese knotweed. So it's really, really everywhere. But it's also, it gets also more invasive. There will be more invasive forms, just like on this picture, which is on in a Goethe Institute. I did have it really take all the place over in different forms. I don't remember what I want to say, but it's good page. We will continue. And here in town, for example, this wall, I think it's 40 square meter with Japanese knotweed paints. The exhibition is until 20th of August. It's in Rotterdam if you'd like to come to see. No. I really like to have Japanese knotweed come in this white box of the museum. So, like nature meeting culture. No, that was it. Oh, do you have any questions? Yes?
How did the hair of your niece turn out?
No, I didn't change it. It gave me a little yellow at first, and she did call me 3 weeks after, and it did get even more yellow with the sun. So it was.
Nice yellow or yellow?
Yeah, she was very happy. Yes?
I was curious, the exhibition is good.
Yeah.
What are we looking at actually?
This material in fact, it's made of the paper pulp, which I did make, so it's just the fiber of the plant. When I was growing molds, I wanted to have materials to grow the molds on, so I had like buckwheat flowers or that kind of stuff. So it's just the fiber of the plants with a little bit of flowers, and sometimes it is buckwheat flowers, sometimes it is rice, or depends on what I want to. You don't see very much on the picture, but it's really there is a gradient from very dark to very light also, because the way I process it. Yes? No.
It's a substrate substrate growing champignons. Mushrooms.
Yeah.
Is it sold somewhere? Can you buy it? Can you make it yourself?
Probably. I don't know. I don't know if I want to make something. I just look at the internet and Google for this. So my library here.
Presentation. I thought you had some presentation.
Oh, I did make some substrate myself. Yeah. It's,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, our next speaker is Pauline Wiersema. Welcome. You will do a very exciting cooking show. I think we've all tasted a little bit of the knotweed already with the tea and the bread. So I'm really excited what you're going to do. Have fun.
All right, is there anyone around who happens to be hungry right now? Really? There's a lot of food at Media Magic. You can just like go ahead and eat it. Okay, that might be good because you might end up actually liking knotweed even more after my presentation because I'm just going to be talking about food here. My name is Pauline Wiersema. I'm a concept designer and I've been asked to kind of give a little twist to knotweed. And the main thing is, wait, can we go to one of the slides? Okay. Oh, it's fine. I'm in control. Great. Yeah, and it's actually very simple. If you can't beat it, eat it. Knotweed is edible, as you may have noticed by now. And we decided that the easiest way to just teach people how to prepare knotweed is to show them. And what better way is there than to actually produce a professional cooking show? You might wonder, oh my god, am I at the premiere of the cooking show? Definitely not, because we're producing it next week. So I'm just here to tell you what we'll be doing, and then you're going to get really excited, and then you're going to binge watch all the videos once they come out, and share it with everyone, hopefully. So, what have we been doing so far? Well, of course, this is actually a slide with graphic experimentation, so maybe not the most interesting, but you might actually see some of that here in the show. But more importantly, of course, we had to really dig for the knotweed and try to find it as early as possible so we could start experimenting with new recipes. And we found 3 incredible chefs. One of them actually works at Mediamatic, another one used to work at a vegan restaurant in Leipzig for years, and the third one is actually kind of Instagram famous. She's called Veggie Lane, maybe some follow her online, I don't know. So we can also reach the big audience. And we started experimenting. So in the middle, there's Gregor, he's a chef. And of course we peeled it, and then we developed a chutney. And among others, there is also going to be a knotweed pesto. So it's actually incredibly simple. So anyone, if you ever get to this point where you're just tired and you end up like eating pasta with pesto like a true student, we actually found you a substitute, and it's cheaper because knotweed is for free. So yeah, we're going to show you how to make pesto. We're going to show you how to make knotweed little pies, knotweed cheesecake, and of course there's also the chutney. So yeah, that's really exciting. And it's going to be the whole process. So from start to end, you're going to learn how to actually pick it safely because we don't want you spreading it around in your neighborhood. And then, you know, the peeling, the preparing, and of course the cooking and definitely the eating as well. So yeah, there's you know, this is a little peek behind the scenes. Of course, we made a whole structure of what you're going to have to see. I'm a binge watcher of cooking shows myself, so I just used images of other shows that come in handy. And it's going to take you through all the steps, and it's going to hopefully end up with all of you being very excited about picking knotweed, going home and preparing it for your friends or family or just for yourself. Yeah, that's the end goal. I want everyone to eat knotweed. I want people like almost, you know, figuratively fight over the bushes that grow in the backyards and like kind of make it as integrated into as picking blueberries or picking blackberries. You want to go for blackberries, blueberries, and knotweed. That's the goal. So stay tuned. Keep an eye out for the Mediamatic social media. And that's it for now. Yes. Thank you. Are there any questions? I feel like if you take the definition of superfood, it definitely is superfood, but that also accounts for broccoli and like carrots. It's somewhere in there, and I do think there's some medicinal use for it in Japan, but I'm not really like gonna, present that to you as facts because I'm really not entirely sure. It's a vegetable, something. There's a lot of vitamins, so you can definitely, it's better than French fries, for sure. Huh? It boosts, yeah. But kind of everything does these days, right? So that's a bit of like, this one more, okay. Well, there you go. Other questions?
Are you going to have an intro jingle?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you sing it?
No. Can you sing?
I have to.
Right. Bit of a backing out. Yeah, there's definitely going to be a jingle, but we're going to have to still kind of, it's not in here, but it's definitely going to be in there. So, maybe.
Is there an asparagus option that you would leave it white? So if you would cover it up and it grows, will it be different from the green?
You mean the color?
Yeah, and the
Oh, you
taste,
wanna-
of course, of green asparagus is different
You
from
want
white
to
asparagus.
whiteify the knotweed? I'm not really sure. I mean, I haven't tried, but I think you should definitely give it a go. Just make sure you don't.
I can say something.
Can you?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you can do it if you know a place where you expect it to pop up. You can cover it up by just with a black bucket and protect it from daylight. It will remain very pale and also a little bit softer, less fibrous. So some people think you do this as a sort of connoisseur trick. Yeah, good idea.
Yeah, probably going to be really quick. Other questions? Who's excited? Raise your hand if you're excited. Okay, I'll take that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The last presenters is from Takako. After which we have three questions. It's Hamano and Takako. Welcome. They are doing Eat Art experience here in East Bavaria. I'm very excited for your work. So take the stage and we'll work with us. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Takako. My name is Bruno. And we are from Eat Art Experience. And oh, maybe. So how are you? Have you had a very busy week? From running from one appointment to another? Yes? And maybe some of you had a very easy week, somewhat. But it's Saturday anyways, it's very nice weather. Still chilly a little bit. But do you feel like having this? Yes. Yeah? And with Eat Art Experience, we propose you to pause your time. Oh. And Uno and I have been collaborating since a year with this project, Eat Art Experience. And what we offer in this experience is, okay, first thing you saw, it's a brainstem dry head spa, done by me, and which is a new technique in the Netherlands. So it's a special dry head spa. And together with that, Uno is creating pieces of food art and also ikebana. And mainly I make drawings and sometimes sculptural things. We make a sort of presentation, arrangement, where you can look and observe and read artworks and perhaps touch also. And you also listen to a soundscape and maybe story. And you, of course, taste art food pieces in 60 minutes of silence. This is what I offer. And with the dry head spa, I approach your brain stem, which is a central part of your body system. So I'm basically approaching your autonomic nerve. So you will relax very much, very deeply. And I stimulate your 5 senses to open up. And with this status, we experience all the elements. So you actually find new perspectives to experience things. Next. Yeah, this is also we do a dialogue, and during our dialogues we exchange our thoughts, things that we find, and then we create artworks or just things for you to experience. And we have an Instagram dialogue page. So if you have a smartphone, you can scan this QR code. And you're very welcome to follow us. And this is what we do. Since 2 weeks, we have been making a special dialogue around Japanese knotweed, of course. And I think about the dialogue, Uno will explain a little bit.
So during the dialogue, what we are doing is first we try to find knotweed around our neighborhood. Then somehow my eyes, I don't know Takako, but somehow my eyes cannot remember the shape, or it's quite difficult to find around us. But after a while, I'm here, then the media man showed me several worms or the dried branches. Then suddenly my eyes started picking up the things. Then I just wanted to tell that I found it here or there. Then I just post something. Then Takako replied some pictures or painting. So what we are doing is now we started to harvest this from Japanese knotweed. Takako drew. Then I started to make some ikebana. It's not on here, but on the Insta page. So we are still communicate like this. But on the 29th and the 30th, you will see what we are making and also experience what we create from that. So start to curious about what we are making, right?
Yes, and you will be able to taste some of, maybe not all of them, but partially, like making itadori syrup, that's my syrup with effective microorganisms using, so it's a very special enzyme syrup. That might not be still, it needs to be, still take time it needs to be ready. But other syrup made by other artists, we are collaborating also. So what you will experience in these sessions are what you will experience, but we aim to collaborate with as many other artists as possible in this festival, because that's what we like to do, and collaborating. Also, Uno and I are collaborating, and we get inspirations from other artists' perspectives too. So this time, some artists are going to collaborate with us, but taste and also the visual things. And I think if you attend this experience, you will also learn much more about individual artists' work. So I think we wish to contribute in this way, that your other artists' work will be in a much more deeper way to be experienced and perceived, and for our audience to get new perspectives. So 29th and 30th of
April. I think they're not fully booked yet, so if you're curious, come and join us to share with us 60 minutes of silence. And of course, after that, after 60 minutes, we have a time to share with snacks, very special Japanese food, and with Japanese knotweed, and nice chat. So, you're welcome. And thank you very much for Mediamatic to have us here.
People have questions.
Oh,
If not, then expert. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we're still going to continue with showing you what's going to happen in our stage, because we're actually sitting right in the middle of the exhibition of Niek Kristof, out in my backyard. We're a little bit early on the schedule, but I would love to invite them to the stage, give them a warm applause. So we will later this day formally open the exhibitions. But we will have the pleasure of going to the exhibition with you. So I'm really curious what you guys think. And I found it's really beautiful.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for having us here at this wonderful Japanese Knotweed festival. I can't remember exactly the first met as a species, but I do remember.
Can you speak up a bit? Or turn it up?
The max.
So we can hear you.
Okay now?
Yes.
I can't remember exactly where we first met as a species, but I do remember the slightly uneasy feeling I got from this encounter. The feeling when you notice something but can't pinpoint exactly what. An alienation. How can you even see if you keep staring at something but you can't name it? What if the blind spot is in your head and not in your eye? And I suffered from plant blindness, like many of my fellow human species and city companions. I shared with them the inability to notice or recognize plants. And this gap in my human vision prevented me from determining the change that was taking place before my eyes. It was a lost spot between the always busy freeway exits, alongside a pile of Flemish stone roads, next to a supermarket, a self-service restaurant, and a shoe store. There, on that particular spot, something was changing. Propagation had started, and the local invasion had already begun. It spread underground first, drilling through the concrete road edges, eating its way under the asphalt, crowding out native species, and making countless interconnected branches that could each germination. It was there, in that spot, that we first began to notice the steady transformation and could observe the advance of Japanese knotweed in the landscape for the first time. Unconsciously at first. However then, with increasing chunks of knowledge and attention, the organism grew faster, deeper, and higher, until it was impossible to escape the ever-growing green wall of this for me unknown plant. The plant that I did not see or recognize at first suddenly appeared everywhere, and formed a visual landmark. She appropriated this forgotten spot and conquered more territory every year. An invasion had begun, and not only here. From the moment I could distinguish her from the other plants, our encounters became more frequent and numerous. I met her less than 100 meters from her front door. Lushly in bloom in front of the white electricity box between the village bakery and church. I greeted her in the neighboring cornfield and encountered her in the perfectly trimmed hedge of the largest mansion of the street. I saw her between the patio boards of the local neighborhood cafe. She stands waving after me along the railroad tracks that crisscross the country. And I encounter her on most of the exits and roadsides of our Belgian highways. It moves smoothly along our waterways, where it reproduces lustily, but still mainly asexual. I found her again in the nature reserves, in the dense forest, and she's present in the in-between areas, wastelands and brownfields that are so dear to me.
There we were, on a cold grey afternoon along a busy road, a forgotten backside, which, for a lack of economic value, had been reappropriated by non-humans. For now, anyway. Together we stared at a meter-long mass of warm browns with the last remnants of leafy greens and bright yellows here and there. The falling of the leaves exposed the jagged structure of the woody stems with a few dried petals still on the ends. It felt uncomfortable, not towards the other human being next to me, but towards this third new actor we want to work with. We did not yet know each other well, so the approachment was tentative, scanning. My bias was colored by superficial stories and imagery about diffusion and contagion that hinged with words like liberate, repress, and invade. It was a feeling that would return on subsequent encounters, but would soften each time and give way to greater curiosity, understanding, and respect. Cautiously, we made our way deeper into the wild, past many net-woven vistas, and found masses of 3-meter tall groups of Japanese knotweed hiding, to our surprise, a stream. It could thrive there and did not leave much room for the passage of others. The sudden jump from a paved parking lot to a seemingly different world that doesn't meters apart was alienating. I almost experienced our presence there as disruptive. There we were, on a cold gray afternoon, as intruders, or rather visitors, into someone else's world. Terra incognita, we come in peace.
So my name is Niek Kristof. I'm a visual artist, photographer, and researcher, and professor connected to Leuven School of Arts and University of Leuven. And in my research project and artistic practice, I try to agitate against Anthropocene and to implement a sustained gaze, which takes into account other than humans as well. And I use organic, photographic, and participatory processes to strive for democracy of speech.
Hello, I'm Niek. I'm a lecturer and a design researcher at the Leuven School of Arts. I also have a background in graphic design and interaction design, and I'm actually finishing up my PhD in Flutes, which this is a large part of course, but it mainly focuses on vernacular design, so design properties which can be interpreted very broadly, that are proprietary to certain complex groups, peoples, communities, also related to non-human actors, or more than human actors. And a large part of my project exploring that was directly related to that. And all these practices that I do are very much based on collaboration and participation.
And for the NIMBY project, we work together to research the impact of Japanese knotweed in our environment. And the project started from a growing fascination for this particular plant. But nobody seems to want it in their backyard. So we were really intrigued by our increasing role in our environment and our protectionist attitude towards her as a society. We use different visual and experimental strategies from different viewpoints and disciplines, combined with scientific and academic insights, to analyze the complex questions of invasive species. And it resulted in a series of experiments where we didn't see the Japanese knotweed as an object of study, but as a fellow researcher to study with.
So the end result of all that research work and design and art work, we ended up producing a book publication, which you can see the object itself, which contains a selection of all those experiments we did, strategies we did. So it was really an open way of looking at, okay, what can we do with our practice? And here's this new issue that is happening in our environment, and let's see what we can do with it, with the experience that we have ourselves and the different backgrounds we have, what can come from this. So the idea is that we, for the coming 10 to 20 minutes, will take you throughout throughout the book. Definitely not every part of the book, but we'll highlight some things and give you some background information, thoughts that are part of our processes, or how we very practically handled certain things. So, how it normally goes, you start at the back. So this is the back of the book, where I want to highlight the subtitle actually. So the title is Not in My Backyard, which Kristof already references in his text. But the subtitle is An Incomplete Visual, Physical, and Societal Dissection of the Invasive Alien Plant Species, Japanese knotweed. It kind of sums it up, but I think it could use some more elaboration. What you notice immediately, of course, is that we kind of highlight some words by putting in between brackets. Sorry. So incompleteness, of course, because this is very limited. I think we saw a lot of other different approaches and views on Japanese knotweed today and even yesterday. So we have this small part of it, while we try to create a very large range of different views on it within our book. We recognize that there are a lot of other ways of thinking that's out there that we can't encompass. And then, of course, we have the invasive alien, which is between brackets. It's actually a kind of topical and critical plant studies, where the question also was raised, calling it invasive and calling it alien is kind of could be part of the problem of the perception of the plants. We use it, of course, it's easy to describe it because it immediately sets the mind of it, okay, it's coming from somewhere else, and it highlights the challenges, but it could also have a negative impact. So we include it, describe it, but at the same time we question it. An alternative is talking about abundant plants, for instance. Next, of course, the idea, the word dissection maybe kind of jumps to the eye. It's clear that because we have a background in photography and graphic design, we are very much interested in the visual, in how you perceive the plant, or how the plant is perceived visually, and we use our own visual tools, so to say, to kind of rethink this in the process, but also in the output. We also experiment with these physical properties of Japanese knotweed, and of course it's at the same time it's sort of a societal dissection, because our project is of course not neutral. I think nothing that has been presented here is really quite neutral, because you always take a kind of position of how you present yourself or position yourself towards this issue. That's why we also see it as societal dissection of, okay, what is the perception now? What is people around us? How do they look at the plant? how are policymakers looking at this issue. We try to involve all those aspects also, or the sectors there in some sort of way. So yeah, that was kind of an introduction to the book.
And as you just quoted, we started our project or book with a visual dissection of the plant. And I want you to look at this picture. Really take a close look at the plant. Look how gorgeous she is. She's really a beauty. And she used to be a star, a prize-winning plant, praised for aesthetics in 1847, and she received the first prize of the Utrecht Land and Tuinbouwgenootschap. A lot of things has changed, and now we know her as one of the most badass breeds. She's notorious. And governments are spending millions to get rid of her, to exterminate her, to freeze her, to poison her. So, what happened? How come she transformed from a star to an outcast? And the first species of Japanese knotweed were brought to Europe by, as you might know now, by Dr. von Siebold. And von Siebold not only brought the plant to the Netherlands, he also sold them in his nursery as an exotic and exceptional plant. And at first, they were sold for lots of cash. But after a few years, things started to shift. Because people noticed that once a specimen of Japanese knotweed was planted in their garden, you simply couldn't get rid of her, and she was spreading rapidly. The Japanese knotweed was there to stay, and she was feral. And this caused lots of trouble, because people, we love control, especially in our gardens. We love to decide which plant may grow where in which specific area and which does not. We love to categorize plants. The Japanese knotweed, she simply doesn't care. It was the start of a complex and still enduring conflict of territory and control. And the problem is it our territory? We have to share our common grounds, and we have to acknowledge the existence and agencies of other species, inclusive invasive species. And we should overcome our plant blindness and really take a close look at what a Japanese knotweed really is. An intellectual living creature, a fellow living organism, which interacts with our human actions. So look at her again. Look how gorgeous she is. Learn from her, but do understand she's feral. And in fact, we have to admire invasive species for the reasons we hate them. Because they're capable of adapting to changing living conditions and territories. They grow quickly, are flexible, and are resistant to most of our human destructive forces. In fact, they are fully equipped to survive crisis situations and restore disturbed ecologies. And therefore, invasive species could be the native plants of tomorrow. And we should learn to share our territory to coexist. And we should negotiate with her about her position in our society. We should strive for a democracy of species. And as a photographer, I've always been interested in uncontrolled land and disturbed ecologies. Pieces of land that are unmanaged, forgotten, or are just in between zones. And these spots are not only the perfect hideouts for me as a photographer, but also are the perfect hideout places for invasive plants. And as such, perfect breeding grounds for a new ecology. Because often we perceive ecology as a fixed state, and we as humans should maintain it, restore it to a previous, more desirable state. But in fact, ecology is flux, it's fluid. And it becomes really interesting when we exceed human time frames and start thinking in terms of deep time, thousand years. And it becomes clear that these invasives are the future natives of tomorrow. And when we started this project, we were in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic and full lockdown. So we were very restricted in our actions. And the NIMBY project became suddenly hyper-local because we were not allowed to move more than 5 kilometers. And it was actually a great opportunity to re-explore our environment and to find these higher places, these disturbed ecologies and uncontrolled landslides. There was another thing that's really important in this COVID-19 period. We were not allowed to take photographs in the landscape. So it was really necessary to photograph at night. And what became really interesting when I took these pictures by night was how Japanese knotweed reacted to the light, to this artificial light. Because in pure daylight, Japanese knotweed could resemble a green wall. But when there's artificial light involved, she really becomes alive. And I really love the way how she responded to the light. And by photographing her, I became more and more aware of her appearance in our neighborhood.
Okay, a little background to that, of course, because Kristof made amazing images, of course, we can all agree. Well, we found it interesting to also show this kind of process behind these images, and in the last presentation, I think Uno was talking about recognizing it and sending pictures, and yeah, it sounded very familiar. Because that's actually exactly what happened with also. Okay, it's also here in this part of the city, and there is another one, and look at this one growing here, and might sound familiar for everyone in these first phases of getting to know the plant and recognizing it everywhere. But it gave us a good overview of where it is, because as Kristof said, because we were very working hyper-local, it gave us quickly a very good overview of what was happening in our city with Japanese knotweed, where it was popping up, in the different kind of places that it was popping up. Of course, there's a lot of links between these kind of places because they're usually unmanaged, forgotten spaces, away from the eye, from the, let's say, mainstream tourists in different parts of the city. But because we live in Hasselt in Belgium, which is a very small city, so we could quickly get that overview. We, like, again, a lot of people before us, before noon, we also saw other maps of other cities. A very well documented one in Amsterdam, I might say. We started making our own map also from the start, linked with those WhatsApp messages with images of where it was. We kind of tried to tag it in our environment. Actually opened up, this is like a little more pretty graphical translation of a Google Map system that we opened up. We also try to involve our students, because we also teach course on where we invite students in to work on Japanese knotweed, and we open it also up for them. So actually there are also, because this is like the boundaries of the city of Hasselt and Genk, which is nearby, is where our school is actually, but actually because our students are coming from other places of the country, they started mapping also in the village that they live or the city that they live. So it's actually even after the book was published, the map kept expanding. But yeah, you see like an interesting group of hotspots right here at the left side, which is right next to the brand new IKEA that was opened in Oslo a few years ago, where it was very clear, okay, large construction work in the landscape brought this newcomer to that area that definitely wasn't there. So you discover these links and new spots between the city. This is another part of the book and another time frame of the project. Also, two different projects. On the left, you see a collage that I made, and it really dealt a lot in the beginning. You heard it in our introductory text, also from our personal experience, that there is a lot of stigma around the plant, which is kind of being upheld by sometimes commercial actors, which use this fear of this plant to make money, to put it quite simple. But you feel that it is kind of infused into the minds of a lot of people. I can include my own. At the beginning of this project, when I started to know that this first layer about Japanese knotweed that is out there is mainly this layer, this layer of fear of this is a problem and we discuss. We all know this. I don't have to, I'm preaching to the choir here, I guess. Why this is the problem. But as someone who is interested in the visual aspect of this, I kind of made a mapping of actually I just started collecting in a separate folder on my laptop all these sometimes very extreme visual imagery about Japanese knotweed, trying to emphasize this threat level actually that this plant has. So from this collection I made a collage for this book. As you can see, very typical, which we saw already in previous presentations also. It's good to see this coming back, like this persons in hazmat suits that are eradicating knotweed with heavy chemicals probably, or Japanese knotweed breaking through concrete. Also a very good shocking image that is kind of exploited, wrongfully maybe. And of course, typically what you see these red spots covered is like this heat maps, which it's a whole kind of thing in graphic design also, or information design is how do you present things. The fact that you use kind of colors, red colors where there is a lot of concentration, which indicates a kind of problem. In our culture, red is stuff or is problematic. The fact that they use that here to delineate kind of areas where there are a lot of groups of Japanese knotweed also have implications which we might not be aware of, but it influences how we and everyone around us looks at this plant. Okay, maybe shortly on the right. We, like everyone else maybe, or a lot of people who get in touch with this, what can we do with Japanese knotweed and with the material? It's easy opportunities of dyeing, of course. I saw in Lucie's presentation, very interesting and deep-going experience on what are the possibilities of that. We definitely didn't went that deep, but we kind of also from every part, so the leaves, stems, and the rhizome. We also extracted colors and dyed them. This is definitely not our expertise, but we noticed that it was a very good way to get closer to the plant. So we did this quite early on for ourselves, and we also do a workshop with our students every time we do this class very early on, and because we also see with them this kind of overcoming of plant blindness, and then still kind of feeling this fear because I have to be careful, and yes, that's true, but okay, you can get closer to it, you can touch it even, it's no problem. So we saw this doing a workshop, creating a dye, doing like the simple things as a very good way of overcoming these problematic thoughts or kind of trying to evade it even. a good technique to do it. So we saw that as before. Talking about color, we also did something else because when we talk about visuality of the plant, really looking at it, colors also, of course, also come into the mind of a graphic designer or a visual artist or a photographer. And I'm working a lot about identity and mainly trying to see how this modernist idea of identity of being just one fixed thing, we can surpass that and thinking about identity as a much more fluid thing. And how, of course, how this translated to graphic design, because graphic design is also very much engraved in this idea of, okay, I have to make it as a company and it has to have a graphic identity, and so it needs like a color palette, like 2 or 3 strong colors so it's recognizable, and a logo and everything like that, which has its merits, of course, but as a researcher, I'm more challenged by the idea of, okay, how can we, again, surpass that, and how can much more complex identities also be interesting, because they are not simplified representations. So from that thinking, kind of a summary of a lot of theoretical background, but from that idea, translated also directly into Japanese knotweed. Okay, what I see here, I can distill like the main colors that I see in this plant in different seasons, but maybe we should not distill certain colors, because not going into color theory, but color works differently, very complex, and you see something as one color, I see it as another color. Anyway, to go past that, we thought, okay, maybe we should just use all the colors that are in the Japanese knotweed. So what we actually did here, for every season and also from the rhizome, we created kind of a color library, which is on the right, like one of these 5 images contains the entire color library of like that image. So it's in the springtime, young stems, young shoots. And you see here this kind of list, because it contains, I think here, 142,913 colors, which are unique colors that are present in that image. This is one list of color codes that are in there. So you see here the difference with, for instance, in the fall, where there's still some leaves left. You get these other images where there's still 84,000 unique colors. The differences there is the colors are sorted in a different way. So there are different ways of sorting color, and these are these differences.
And we're talking about pigments, blonde pigments. This is a really interesting image, because I use the antitype process, and the antitype process is a photographic organic process that was historically founded in the 19th century by Sir John Herschel, and it actually works with extracting plant pigments and bleaching them under a contact print. So what we're seeing here is an image made with pigments extracted from the Japanese knotweed rhizomes and stems. So it is a really interesting way to work with Japanese knotweed and to use it as a source for image making. And these are just the first experiments, and we're doing some other experiments to make larger prints, and we hope to make one here at Mediamatic during the following months. Because to make one print, it takes more than 30 days in full sunlight to get one exposure. So it's a really slow process, it takes a lot of time, but therefore it's really interesting. Another really interesting thing about the pigment of the Japanese knotweed is mostly you require a positive transparent on top of your emulsion to create a positive image. But with emulsion from the Japanese knotweed rhizome, it becomes the negative. So it's really interesting to see in future research how it will react.
Okay, as a final thing of in our selection from the book, it's also actually based on dyeing, and it's a combination of the dye with this idea about identity, that I already was talking about. Flags are this kind of symbol of identity. They kind of create this recognition of a certain group. That's how it's traditionally used, at least. So it's an interesting medium to kind of materialize this thinking about identity around Japanese knotweed that we developed. What we actually did quite practically was, because it's a woven flag, you see a detailed photo in the background where you see that it's woven, and we actually used 4 different color dyes on separate spools. So we dyed the yarn that was still on the spool, which is quite challenging because you have to take it on the spool and get back on the spool. Like that. We worked together with a local weaver. She actually lives on my street, so it was perfect. She was very open to experiment together with us on this. So it's woven from these different spools at different dye colors. And the weaving technique is very intricate, and there's a lot of fine details in it. So there are kind of two, maybe more layers to the flag, but at least from distance-wise, you see this general image on the back. And of course, the macro shows a lot of these details that are in there. Also referencing, of course, again to these different ways of not having like this one way of doing it. Also, maybe interesting to note is that you see like this one band on the flag that is a little bit darker. It was also something that happened by accident. So it was during the dyeing process of the spools that, for some reason, I don't know, and it's not important that I know. It's like a heavy accident. The drying process, or was maybe longer exposed to the to air, wasn't submerged enough, something like that. But it turned out there was a darker patch that was going through there, so it's really interesting. One aspect, of course, also is that we didn't fixate the dye, so it's very light sensitive still. And of course, we also used one part of the dye were the leaves, and if you have experience with extracting dye from leaves, it's super light sensitive, of course, and even during the weaving process, in between sessions, it had to be covered from the light to kind of keep some green still in there. I think the projector kind of takes some things out, but there actually was still green in there. Now it's almost all gone, of course, and it's the same for all the other colors. So I kind of now just keep it locked up in the dark to kind of keep that. But of course, that is part of the idea that the plant also has influence on the design, and that's not I who completely determine this is how this flag should look, because this is the perfect image that would attract people, or as a strong image to have like a strong identity for Japanese knotweed. No, it's the colors that the plant offers, and I have a say in it also. But the plant also, because of its properties, kind of transforms the design over time when it's exposed to light. Right, it's another detail where the greens are a lot more clear, but they're very much light green at the moment.
So with our book, with our project, Not in My Backyard, we try to counterbalance the negative framework surrounding Japanese knotweed and other invasive species, while keeping in mind positive attributes. Are they not simply the prelude of transformation to an ecosystem globally connected to diversity, and as well a reflection of a contemporary society? What are weeds? what is nature, who are we? Giving visibility and getting closer can be a first step towards an open mind, towards non-anthropocentric thinking and the renegotiation of the ways of living together, to strive for democracy of the species. Thank you so much.
Are there any questions?
Is your book available?
Okay, so the thing is, we don't like to produce 1,000 books and then have 500 lying around. So we actually made a very small number of books, 150, to spread. They're almost all gone, but Mediamatic has still some left here. So if you want to purchase one, that is very much an option still.
How much are they?
Well, the books are 30 euros. Didn't mean that like this promo talk. You asked, so.
It's a presentation about the book.
Yeah. But there's an exhibition about the book also, so you can.
Fine, I won't buy your book.
Yes. Questions?
Are those all the pages of the book?
No, so I made a selection. One main part that we took out, there is also a textual part of the book, which kind of read the introduction, it will be in our presentation, that's in there. But Mediamatic created a handout which contains the entire textual part of the book, which gives more in-depth about the background also, which we discussed a lot earlier here. About Fujisawa and how this transformation from ornamental plants to the hate plant that's in there, and our thinking around this. It's also this wider framework of our thinking. So you can kind of with this and looking at this, you can summarize. I think there are maybe 8 pages or something like that left out also, because we also in the book included some student work that was very interesting that they did, and they were also research, of course. But we chose here because the space was also limited here. They're using the entire room. We chose to leave them out also, but all the rest is our entire book, which is still a selection of our entire work that we did, but it's the best selection. Yeah.
I'm really curious yesterday also, what is the black and white part of the
Yeah. You see how it's well, the beginning of the book is actually there. We saw with the section on white background, just introducing the plant as it is, sort of say, out of their context mainly. And after that, what we really tried to do was kind of create this feeling that we had in the beginning of our work with the plant, of this kind of disorientation, maybe also it's a graphic representation also about this heavy, dark even, dark mythology also about of Timothy Morton kind of influences also, and we really try to capture in a very abstract way these feelings of disarray that we had in the beginning. There are translations of actually images that we took, sort of like took of the plant, but have been edited. So maybe you can still find a reference somewhere, but any other questions? Yes.
The color is coming from the young Japanese knotweed or like dried one from each stage?
So not dried ones. I think it was in, we can see it here in the book, at the secret manual here. We did it in spring and summer time. Somewhere in between there. So I don't think very young stems because we need to have some mass. So it's easier to wait a little bit longer until they're a little bit taller. So yeah, I think it was maybe like a meter to 2 meters. We're thinking about between spring and summer, something like that. Yeah.
I was just curious if it gives good color.
Yeah. But again, I think this is definitely not, we kind of dove into this to create new images. But as we saw here earlier, Lucie, and I think there's a lot of other people who have this very much more deep expertise of different phases, different production methods of extracting dyes, getting pigments and something like that. So definitely not the expert, but I had fun doing it. If that's it, I would like to invite you again to the Bruhek exchange of Raten, because there is still a lot left, and I tasted it and it was very, very yummy. So please join us there.
We are now we'll eat burek in a rather long break because we continue at 4 o'clock for the opening presentations of the art projects. Naomi, are you trying to signal me something?
Yeah, I'll hold the microphone. That's better. Yes.
Sorry. So we will reconvene with a full belly at 4 o'clock when there's the last big presentations of the art projects that we're exhibiting in the coming months. And then we'll have a drink together and we can visit these exhibitions. So see you back here at 4 and enjoy the work.